Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. A mother of two with stage 4 breast cancer fears long wait times to see an oncologist, have lost her precious time and perhaps even her life. We'll look at what needs to be done to increase access to specialists here in BC. And it is Friday, so of course your favorite gardener, Brian Minter, will be here to tell you what you need to know to make everything grow. I'm Amy Bell, in today for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thank you so much for joining us on radio, on TV, and live stream. And you can call us now on our top story. What do you think needs to be done to improve long wait times for diagnosis and treatment? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call us at 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690. You can also email us bctoday@cbc.ca. As I mentioned, a 40-year-old mother of two is speaking out about wait times to see an oncologist after her stage 4 cancer diagnosis. Sarah Galuli was diagnosed with breast cancer last year, and the Port Moody resident spoke to reporters yesterday at the BC Legislature, raising concerns about timely access to care in the BC healthcare system.
The story started pretty slowly. I did get a mammogram, and then a few weeks later an ultrasound, and after that a biopsy. During my ultrasound, I looked at the screen, which I probably shouldn't have done because I could see the network of veins coming to the tumor, and it was a very scary moment. The tech told me, don't ever come to these things alone. Always bring someone. And I knew then that it was cancer. I started to ask myself a lot of questions. Was Canada the right place for me to be? Was I going to get the surgery fast enough?
That was Sarah Galuli, diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, speaking from the legislature. She's raising concerns about the months-long wait to see an oncologist. She says she wasn't referred to BC Cancer until after her surgery, so it was 3 months from diagnosis to her first oncology meeting, where she feels she lost so much precious time. Now, medical specialists in BC are warning of a crisis when it comes to wait lists. They say over 1.2 million people are waiting to see a specialist. So we're asking you, what do you think needs to be done to improve these wait times in BC? And have you been impacted by long wait times in the BC healthcare system? Call us at 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950, or email us bctoday@cbc.ca. And you can leave a comment on our TikTok live. And joining us now is Dr. Robert Carruthers. He is a neurologist and the president of the Consultant Specialists of B.C. That's an independent organization that represents the BC specialist physician perspective in advocating for these critical issues to health stakeholders. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Carruthers.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on.
And we just heard, obviously, from Sarah Galuli, who is in a terrible, heartbreaking stage of her life thanks to her cancer diagnosis. But she feels that the delay in seeing a specialist to move forward with treatment has really cost her a lot of time. What is your reaction when you hear a story like Sarah's?
I am heartbroken.
Yeah.
For her family. And this is a struggle that we have in our healthcare system. Her situation is not unique. And unfortunately, many other people are experiencing delays like this. And it's my worst nightmare that this kind of delay will impact the life of a human being like this.
And so tell us about, the work that you do and physicians do with the Consultant Specialists of BC. And especially I want to hear about the Every Number is a Story campaign that was launched.
So I'll highlight that for the last several years, we've been working really hard to draw attention to worsening wait times in British Columbia. In 2022, a survey of specialists was done, and when you extrapolate the survey respondents' data from their electronic medical records, where they know how many people are waiting to see them, there are 1 million people waiting, and then we repeated that with Doctors of BC in 2024, and that showed 1.2 million people waiting. And So in 2 years, things are worsening, and it's now been 3 and a bit years since we initially knew that number of 1 million, and there hasn't been any important structural change to improve efficiency. And so that's one thing we've been working on.
And how did we get to this point? Very quickly, it would seem, to see those numbers in just a span of a few years.
It feels quick. I think the answer is that our population has grown by 1 million people since I arrived here in 2014 after finishing my training. And the medical system is just not prepared to handle the volume that is happening right now. And as a result, we are falling behind. So wait times for urgent issues are now at 4 weeks. Wait times for semi-urgent issues are 10 weeks, and then non-urgent issues averaging around 10 months. Which imagine you have like a family member with like possible Parkinson's disease. You'd want to wait a lot less than that. So timely access to care is not assured.
And you mentioned population as a reason. We're seeing this boom in people being here. And then when we look at those numbers, are we seeing that more people are being diagnosed and then not being able to see a specialist? Are there less doctors that are able to make the diagnosis and get them to a proper specialist? Or all of the above?
It's a very complicated situation. Like our population is aging, and so like the medical needs of people as they get into their 60s starts to really increase.
Right.
And so overall, just the volume, the demand in the system is exceeding what it's able to deal with.
And then when we look at the impacts that you've maybe seen on patients, when they are unable to get in to see a specialist, they may be dealing with a lot of pain, with a lot of fear. How does that impact a person, and how does that impact their recovery?
Yeah, it's awful. I just heard the story of a man who reached out to us on our website who's been waiting 14 months to see an orthopedic surgeon about his worsening knee osteoarthritis. And so his mobility is decreasing. He's not able to work. In this process, he wrote that he'd lost his father, and now as a result of not being able to work, he's just like sitting with his grief, right? So his quality of life, his income, everything is impacted.
And not just the patients, I would think. There's also an impact on the caregivers, on the physicians, and the specialists that are having to try and play catch up, are aware of this issue, and that they can't necessarily help.
Yeah, and everything that's going wrong ends up, people go back to their family doctors, people end up in the emergency room, and so hospitals are, full up, and it's a very dire situation. I'm not happy with how things are headed.
And so what do we need to focus on? How do we move forward? How do we make people, or make sure people are able to access that care in a very timely manner?
So that's a great question. We need to improve efficiencies in the referral system. So when your family doctor sends a referral to a specialist, maybe the doctor could just send a note back saying like, hey, here's some advice. Do these 3 things, call me if these things change and I don't need to see you.
Okay.
Then it frees up a spot for another patient, right?
Right.
So it would be great to introduce that kind of efficiency. And then wouldn't it be great if we actually had data on this? Right now, the ministry has 0 data for this particular specialist waitlist problem. They do have some surgical waitlist times, but in the media, it's being conflated, surgical wait times versus just seeing the specialist for the first time. And so I want to just underscore that the ministry doesn't have that data. Right. So how can we improve?
And you said one part of the problem would be, when you see your family doctor, that's a problem in itself. So many people don't even have that step to access.
Absolutely.
I would love if people would join the conversation. We'd love to know if you've been impacted by these long waits and the frustrations that it can bring you. Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We're talking today with Dr. Robert Carruthers, and he, of course, is trying very hard to address these problems and come up with some solutions. We would love to hear your solutions as well. What about, some people point to perhaps opening more private specialty clinics. Would that be an acceptable waitlist solution? I'm assuming, though, that comes at a cost, that people are going to have that sort of 2-tiered healthcare system.
So that is a political question and a question for British Columbians. So with the system that we have, that's not a possibility. I think the system does need investment. There do need to be some improvements in efficiency. I'm not going to comment on privatization.
That's fair.
That's for the people of British Columbia to sort out.
Fair. And if anybody does have some thoughts on that, of course, you can weigh in by calling us at 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. You can also email us bctoday@cbc.ca. I know that BC Cancer says that about 60% of their patients are seeing their oncologist within that 4-week benchmark. So they aim to have you in to see that next step within 4 weeks. Is that acceptable that it's just 60%, that 40% are waiting much longer, such as Sarah Galuli?
If it was my family member, I'd want it to be 100%, right? And I also want people to know that when people are referred to the BCCA, they have a diagnosis of cancer, but the way that 98% of all referrals to the BCCA come from specialists. So if you can't get in to see your urologist, your gastroenterologist, then you're not going to get a diagnosis of cancer.
Right.
So that is the big delay.
Yeah. And so then perhaps by the time they do get that diagnosis, it's already, so far spread as opposed to if they could have caught it early.
This is my fear. This is like our
It's a
group's
huge fear. I think
Yeah.
I think about that. I think about that for myself, for my children, for my father. It's unimaginable. But again, so difficult to come up with a solution. We do have a couple of calls that have come in from Kent in Victoria. Hi, Kent. Thanks for calling.
Hey, how
in.
you doing?
I'm doing
Thank
well. How are you feeling about this delay that we have seeing specialists and having to wait for treatment?
Well, obviously, it's creating a great deal of harm for everybody, right? What I find is just interesting. I'll get right to my point, which is that there are Canadian kids getting into British and European medical schools every year. I know like 4 of them, and they had difficulty getting into a Canadian medical school, but they seem to be just quite capable, quite able to get into, British and European schools. And then a lot of them, because of the residency requirements, can't get back to Canada. So we lose them entirely. So there's 2 things there. One is, we have to do something with the acceptance requirements for medical schools and create those spaces for Canadian medical students. And then maybe look at, I don't know if it's the Medical Association that is really providing a problem with getting doctors that have British or European medical degrees to get them to get into Canadian residencies so that they become Canadian doctors. Okay. A lot of them are, and it's not, as I understand it, it's not a question of standards. Very, very, it's not like we accept British trained doctors. It's just strictly bureaucratic.
Thanks so much for bringing up that point, Kent. I appreciate it. And Dr. Carruthers, I did see you nodding at times when he's talking about people choosing to practice medicine outside of Canada or get their training outside of Canada.
Yeah, definitely. Internationally trained folks are going to be a part of the solution here.
Yeah.
There are already changes. American-trained physicians are able to get a full license in BC now, so it's much easier.
Okay.
The BC College of Physicians and Surgeons is also going to expand that policy to include places like Australia and the United Kingdom. So yes, this is going to happen. How successful will we be in recruiting these folks? I don't know. I'm optimistic that that's going to be a part of the solution. There's other challenges in the system too. For instance, retaining the doctors that we have currently, that's a big struggle. One of the challenges within our fee-for-service system is that it disadvantages women, and there's generally a 20, even 40% pay gap between male and female doctors. Still. And so that's a big concern, right? And so we need to engage and motivate the doctors that we do have. And in neurology, it's 30% of our women. So we need to look after those folks too.
And to your knowledge, is that pay gap, perhaps less in other areas that it would make it more appealing for a Canadian doctor to perhaps move to another country?
I can't answer that directly. Okay. I mean, it's a complicated issue.
Fair.
But to Kent's point, yes, we don't have enough physicians. We need to do more to meet the needs of British Columbians.
All right.
Recruiting people is going to be an important part of it.
Okay. We've got another call in from Heidi in Surrey. Hi, Heidi.
Hello. I just first like to say that I'm old enough to remember the horrible problems in the healthcare system. Years and years ago, the government hired a Dr. Romano, who I believe was the ex-premier of one of the prairie provinces.
Okay.
And it cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars to send this very special doctor and nurses and experts to Europe to study the healthcare system. And they came back with the news that some of the European countries spent less per capita on healthcare than Canada. It was a very successful trip, and I myself and my husband went to a town hall meeting in our town, Surrey.
Okay.
And it was decided that the experts in the medical system would look at this report. I have no idea where it is. I have no idea if anybody in the healthcare system remembers. Another reason I called, for some reason, I kept a sign, a big yellow sign, and that's the only demonstration I have ever attended in my life in Victoria. And on the sign it says, my husband needs open heart surgery. He has been on a waiting list since April 2002. And attached to it, there is a newspaper clipping. It says, healthcare, waiting game. A South Surrey man's life hangs in the balance because he's been on a waiting list for a very long time. Why I kept the sign, I don't know. I just got it out of the garage. All I like to get across that this is not a new problem. I have had a friend waiting for an MRI 2 years ago, and she passed away before she had an MRI.
Oh,
so
sorry.
please do not say that it is a new problem. It's been a problem for about 30 years, in my opinion. And I hope somebody with a lot of wisdom, which will remember Dr. Romano's report and change the whole system, which takes a lot of energy and a lot of will to do it.
Yes. Heidi.
Anyway, that's my story, and I thank you for listening.
Oh, I thank you so much for calling in and sharing, Heidi. And that obviously, yes, highlights that this has been a very ongoing issue. Even though we may see those numbers jumping quickly year to year, it's certainly something that has snowballed over a great deal of time.
It's also deeply personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it impacts so many people at so many different times in their lives as well.
May I speak to the interesting point Heidi made about the per capita cost here? And I just want to say that what we're doing right now with how inefficient it is to go see a doctor, like the cost to the system of that wait time, you know, like the long wait for the MRI or the long wait to see the specialist, like how are we measuring that? You know, because I think that would impact our decision making and how we look after the system if we could truly measure the cost of this inefficiency.
And you hate for it to come down to there having to be enough of a price to pay to enact change. But that is a good point.
That's true.
We don't know the actual cost to various systems, the healthcare system, the economy. There's so much at play here. I want to get another call in from Mohammed in Vancouver. Hi, Mohammed. Thanks for joining BC today. Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I am IMG, International Medical Graduate.
Okay.
I have around 20 years experience in my country, Iran. And what I can see now in the system is like diabetic body. There is full of sugar in the blood, but they can't be absorbed in the cells. The reason is the mechanism is not working. Last week, I had read a report said that more than 11,000 IMGs are in Canada and they are doing something other than physician practice.
Yeah, no.
And it is not good at all. Means the procedure has some problems. I 100% agree with our colleague that the population is growing, but the problem is nobody understands that all the facilities like physicians, healthcare professionals, everything are growing as well, but not absorbed.
And I really
This is one
appreciate
of the
you.
problems.
Mohammed, thank you so
and-
much for making that point. I do want to get time for another call, but yes, as he points out, we have these people that we could use to address this problem, but we have not been able to speed up that process to I guess, license them and get them into the healthcare system.
I'm not an expert on that. I think we can see that the college is making changes in its policies, and we're kind of seeing an expansion of the number of countries where they're going to accept medical training as transferable, and I think that's exciting news. So we just have to keep posted, but I think this will continue.
Yeah, it's a wheel that turns slowly, unfortunately. One last call from Ted in Vancouver. Ted, we've got less than a minute, but I want to get your point in quickly.
Oh, thanks, Amy Bell. Yeah, look, I'm a specialist, so I appreciate you bringing this to the air and increasing awareness. So I have personally noticed one reason for long wait lists is because we have a system here in Canada which we make it basically illegal to access care privately, whether it's you have it paying out of pocket or if you have insurance. Whereas every other OECD country, not only do they have universal public health care, but they also have a private option. They encourage their citizens that when they can afford it to actually purchase insurance, an insurance company will cover their costs. And this really does help offload pressure from the public system. We see it in Australia, we see it in the Netherlands, we see it in New Zealand. Every Western country has this. We're just afraid, unfortunately, that we're going to turn into America. America is used as a boogeyman. They do not have a proper system. We won't turn into them. We will turn into our allies in Western countries that have public and private options. And believe it or not, Canadians who are wealthy are already doing it. They pay for MRIs privately. They go across the border and get their surgeries in Washington or fly to China or fly anywhere else and get their surgery privately. But the middle class who can afford that, but they would be able to have private insurance to afford insurance, they're the ones who are losing out on this, unfortunately.
Ted, I really appreciate you bringing up that point, and I'd like to give you a chance to respond to that before we wrap up here, Dr. Carruthers.
That is... I'm focused on the minutia, like the nitty gritty, like what can we do right now?
Right now, this
that's
day.
a very big question. But I really appreciate the way you worded this, like how can we fix the system? Because it doesn't belong to me or the doctors or the nurses, right? It belongs to all of us.
Yeah, it belongs to the province and its people.
Yeah, and so I'm thrilled we had this conversation.
Well,
Let's keep it going.
I'm thrilled that you came on to join us. Such an important conversation, obviously, and I really appreciate you taking time with us today. That is Dr. Robert Carruthers, a neurologist. He's also the president of the Consultant Specialists of B.C. It is 12:28, and we've got time for just a couple of emails that we received. Jim in Port Alberni writes, I know that most people who call in will be those who have experienced long wait times, but my partner had a cancer diagnosis on Vancouver Island in late June. Within days of having a symptom, had a hysterectomy within a short time, and has had 18 weeks of chemotherapy since then. We feel the treatment has been magnificent and timely, though we know people haven't had such prompt access, particularly in the diagnosis period. Thank you so much for everybody calling in and your emails today. And thanks for joining us on BC Today on Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca, on YouTube at CBC Vancouver, and of course on the CBC News app. I might be losing my voice a little bit, but somebody who is not is Robert Zimmerman, and he is here now with the 12:30 news.
Good afternoon. A former Canadian Olympian who was on the FBI's most wanted list has been arrested in Mexico. Ryan Wedding, who was born in Ontario and grew up in Coquitlam, will be transported from Mexico to the United States. Wedding is accused of trafficking cocaine across much of North America and orchestrating several murders. Preliminary autopsy results show the 19-year-old Campbell River woman who was found dead on a beach in Australia earlier this week had been bitten by dingoes but likely drowned. An autopsy on the body of Piper James showed injuries consistent with dingo bites, but there was also evidence of drowning. A preliminary assessment shows the pre-mortem bite marks were not likely to have caused immediate death. And police have now identified the victim of what's believed to be a targeted attack last night in Burnaby. 28-year-old Dilraj Singh Gill was shot and killed at around 5:30 near Boundary and Canada Way. Investigators say Gill was known to police and his death is likely connected to the gang conflict. And now the forecast on the north coast. Sunny this afternoon with a high of 4. Highs around -13 and mainly sunny in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, lots of sunshine with a high of -13 as well. Highs from -4 to 0 and mainly cloudy in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, Valley cloud with a high of -1. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, sunny this afternoon with highs around 7. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much for that, Rob. And remarks from the head of BC's extortion task force this week triggered swift backlash in Surrey, with critics accusing officials of downplaying the threat. Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke is now urging Ottawa to step in, saying investigations aren't moving fast enough. The BC Conservatives, meanwhile, argue the NDP is responsible for delivering results and maintaining public trust. Public Safety and Solicitor General Nina Krieger spoke with Early Edition host Stephen Quinn about the task force challenges and what she says it's accomplished so far.
The work of the task force has led to concrete results in terms of arrests and charges and, crucially, removals to Canada. The involvement of Canada Border Service Agency in the task force is also quite a novel approach, which has seen results. And this task force is doing essential work, as do all of the police of jurisdiction who are partnered in the task force. These are not easy crimes to investigate. They are complex, national and international in scope, and require the specialized expertise. And we have confidence that the task force is doing essential work. And of course, there is more work to do. Organized crime that fuels extortion, we know that is cyclical, and investigators and levels of government need to be constantly assessing the tools we're using more tools, and keeping at it in terms of our laser focus in bringing these crimes to a stop.
And it is a gorgeous sunny Friday, and Friday means Brian Minter is here with his gardening advice and to take all of your burning questions. So get your calls in now. Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Brian joins us now from Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack. Good afternoon, Brian.
Amy, what a pleasure to be here. What a gorgeous day when the rest
So
of our
gorgeous.
country is not having a gorgeous day at -40. Right?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you. You got it. But you know, while the weather is nice, it kind of changes our attitude and want to get out more. We've been inside for a while now. Still January, we have to remember that. But Amy, one of the great things that Canadians love and British Columbians love is going to garden places at this time of year and looking at seeds.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Dreaming about those, picking those wonderful tomatoes or
It's
the wonderful
true.
color they can have, in their garden all through the summertime. And it's just a nice thing to be able to look and dream.
I'm full
But
of hope before I actually plant anything, Brian, just so you know.
exactly. The hope's a big part of the whole process here right now. Now, we're lucky in Canada to have great seed companies right across our country. And in British Columbia, we have a number of good ones. West Coast Seeds has been very, very good with a lot of unique things. But two things, you can order them online. You can order them from seed companies, or most garden stores across the province do have a pretty good selection of seeds right now. When I say a selection, we've got a lot of great seed companies, Mackenzie out of the prairies and so on. We'll talk about West Coast Seeds here. There's a number of really great seed companies. And I have to say that the seed selection has been getting better. A lot of folks today are looking for those newer hybrid varieties that are more disease tolerant and produce a little bit earlier, and just going through the seed racks to be able to do that. One word of caution is when we start seeing all this wonderful color, we want to have it all, right? So you pick up a little bit of everything. And don't forget that in a seed pack, how many you're going to put in your garden. And so check out how many you need. And usually fewer is better because what do you do with, all those cabbages and everything? Yes, more carrots because they're easy to grow, and beets and root crops like that. But the one thing I wanted to say is to really be very selective when you're picking out your seeds. And number one issue is timing. A lot of us, I'm going to get this going right away. And usually that's too early. The biggest challenge is being able to get your seeds, start them at the right time. And when they start coming up, what do you do with them? And that's why I think the process is, and for starting seeds, if you don't have a heat mat, which are quite widely available, to keep a consistent bottom temperature of your seeds as they grow, that's very important. Lighting over top. If you don't have really good lighting, getting some LED lighting over top, any type of lighting, so your seeds don't stretch, to keep them nice and low. So starting them is one thing. It is really important. The other issue is when they're up, what do you do? And that's why I think being a little bit later is always better, because the missing ingredient in starting all seeds is a cold frame, something you can have outdoors in a protected area. You can buy small ones if you like, but when the seeds are up and the leaves are starting to form, being able to put them outside away from frost so that they'll slow down, be toughen up, and at the right time being able to plant them from there into your garden. That is really the most important thing, because I don't know how many seeds, Amy, they come up, and then now what do we do?
Yeah.
And that's a lot. So that's where the timing comes in, is being very, very important in terms of what we're doing. And I would also like to remind everybody, too, that there's quite a diversity of seeds. And we look at some of the Canadian growers like Stowed Seeds in Ontario that supply a lot of our commercial seeds. There are early varieties of vegetables and plants. There are mid-season. Mid-season will take a bit of the cool, but also do very well in the heat of summertime. And then late, plants that'll take the heat of summer and then mature as it gets cooler in the fall. So we can spread out. It's about having vegetables over a longer period of time and being very selective and choosy about what you get. I think that is so very important. The other reminder is there are certain types of seeds that we're all looking for, the best of the best, our favorites. My advice is grab some of those now, because if you don't, they're gone. And it's hard to restock because we never know what the supply is like. So your favorites that you really have to have, if you find them right away, pick them up right away, then you've got them. And Amy, where do you put them?
I have no
So
clue,
many
Brian.
folks. Okay. The biggest problem is you got to figure that out, because when it's ready to go, where do they put those seeds
Right.
anyway? The safest thing to do is to put them in your deep freeze, not in your refrigerator, in your deep freeze.
Okay.
And I say that, Amy, because we've been doing this for about 50 years, and it keeps the seeds at a consistent temperature and a consistent humidity. And, jokingly, seeds we bought many years ago, sometimes 50 years, they still germinate after that time. But it depends on the variety. Certain seeds like parsley have a very short lifespan as a seed. So, that's why minimum seeds, and then keep using them and replacing them as you go over time is very, very important. It really is. But honestly, the freezer is a great place to put them. And the other thing is, you know where they are when you want to get going, which is very important. That's a big deal, trust me. But no, they're fun. And Amy, it's quite a miracle that when you look at a package of seeds,
Yeah.
maybe 10 or 20 packages, this wonderful tomato. This tomato that's going to be it's a mortgage lifter. It's a heritage variety that will, in fact, have tomatoes 2 or 3 pounds coming from a little seed this same season. I mean, seeds are miraculous.
They
They really
are.
are what you can do. And it's so nice. And that's why so many people, especially our younger generation, love starting their own seeds. It's part of the pride of being able to grow things. And as we talked a couple of weeks ago with Michelle, remember the new rule is, and in terms of the overall, I guess, scope of this year is called lemonading. This is the biggest trend, is lemonading. And that means when things don't go right, get off with it and do it again.
I love that.
And do it with a smile. Have fun with the whole thing. It's not that serious. Don't take yourself seriously. But and that's what seeds are about, is learning how to grow them and starting them and keeping records so you know what you've done. But it's such a fun thing for so many people, and particular folks who are up north, and it's going to be quite a while yet before they'll be able to start anything.
Yeah.
It's just so nice to be able to dream about them. But down here, we're starting our onions right now, our big Spanish onions. We're getting those going right away. Now, they're not going to go out until March sometime, but we want to have the plants ready to go. So that's an early start. And even some of the, Spanish, the very tiny onions, the bunching onions and so on, time for those to go on right now. But, things like tomatoes, oh gosh, there's lots of time yet. I would say mid-February, late February, because, you have to grow them on before you put them out, which is great. And peppers too. Things like kale, whatever, can be started fairly soon right now. So you've got transplants to go out. But again, I've always learned that the little bit later, a little bit better. It always makes such a difference, because you have still a long season to grow things, which is wonderful.
It is
so,
true.
Amy, thank you for allowing me to talk about
No,
seeds. It's so very
I love
important. And anytime we can answer some questions, that'd be wonderful.
Let's do that. Yeah, my kids used to think planting seeds was magic when they were little, and it kind of is. So no dispute there. Let's get in a call from Bryden in North Vancouver. You've got a question about your jade plants.
Yeah, thanks for the call. I've looked after a couple of jade plants I've had for about almost 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And they've developed a bit of a white, dusty kind of powder on the leaves, I noticed last year. And I've rinsed them off. I've tried to kind of keep enough light and heat with them, but it's come back this year, and it kind of develops into like a scab, and the leaves kind of shriveled up, turned a little crystalline, and they fall off. I'm worried about like a fungus maybe.
Bryden, it's quite common. Yeah, thank you for that. It's quite common. And be honest with you, a lot of our plants, but especially the succulent type plants at this time of year, not getting enough light in our homes, even though they're beside a window, there just isn't enough light to give them, is something that's very important. The other thing that all of us, jade plants will kind of fool you a wee bit. Well, it's a succulent. I don't need to water it. And I see them going like aloe vera, the same thing. And they need more water than you think. I would say at least once a week, depending on the soil they're in and how root bound they are. A really good drink of warm water would be good, and right near a window. But Bryden, anytime you're worried about a jade plant, and I've been doing this for years, this is not a bad idea to prune them back at this time of year. If you're not happy with the plant, it's one of those few plants that'll send new growth out of old hard wood. So, and sometimes it looks a little lopsided or doesn't look the shape that you want. Pruning right now and keeping it at a window will make all the difference in your jade. So there isn't really a fungicide to put on for this. It's a nature of a lot of jade plants. But Bryden, my suggestion is prune them back fairly hard, put them near a window, and let them come along, and perhaps give them just a little more water than you think. And that, I think, will really help an awful lot.
All right, Bryden, hope that helps. Don't get fooled by your succulents. That's what I always say. Marie in Souk, we've got a question about getting your lettuce to survive. Hi, Marie, are you there? Yeah. Oh, hi.
Yes, hi. Thanks, Amy and Brian. So nice to talk to you, and so nice to hear about the concept of lemonade. I know when I get compliments on the garden, I always talk about how much I enjoy being in the garden rather than the product. Yeah. I have a question about young lettuce my young lettuce plants I've been growing inside often to get them started germinating. Easier to manage the water. But then I've been having I've had success in the past, but this year it's either, I'm not sure, damping off, or it could be sow bugs or improperly hardened off. And sometimes I see a little wilted lettuce leaf. Sometimes I don't see anything. It's just disappeared. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts there as to where I might get success.
Yeah, Marie, thank you very much. We're starting lettuce right now, as a matter of fact, for the early folks who have a cold greenhouse or somewhere they want to get a start. So here we are, late January, getting a start. Now, a couple of things about lettuce. First of all, please don't use seed soil. Use a great potting soil. We don't put them in seed soil at all. We use a really high quality Pro Mix or Sunshine Mix, and put them in as small a pot as you possibly can. We want them to get root bound quickly. Sometimes, we'll start maybe 3 or different types in a 4-inch pot and let them come along quickly. That is really the secret. And again, all the light you possibly can. But also we're finding once they're up and coming, Marie, we really shut back the water. We lower the temperature and cut off the watering so that they, when you have water and at this time of year, it's an ideal opportunity if a little bit too wet to get a little bit of mildew or some of the diseases you're talking about. So higher light, cooler, and run them a little bit drier. I think you'll find that will help an awful lot. And keeping the root bound in a small pot is absolutely ideal.
All right, Marie, hope that helps you. Brian, I've got an email here that I want to get to because something I've been thinking of. Cheryl writes, Kelowna has had a record-breaking winter for mild temperatures and no snow. Yep. I have an elderberry tree that has started to leaf out. Also, my butterfly bush and hydrangeas, big buds forming on my peony tree, and yarrow, salvia, and other flowers have started to grow. What will happen if we get really frigid temps before spring? Anything I can do to protect my trees and shrubs? I was shocked with how much is sprouting and starting to blossom in my garden, Brian, and I was very concerned when it was so cold this morning.
Yeah, and that's concerning a lot of folks right now. The frost we are getting at night right now is a good thing because it's holding things back a wee bit. Having a severe cold spell it could be deadly. It happened 3 years ago from this year when it was very late in the season. We got a severe cold spell. It was one of the worst we had. And the damage it did was, really incredible. The good news is from the forecasts that we're looking at going to longer, El Nino is off the coast and, all the, not that I'm a meteorologist, but the forecasts that we're looking at, several different ones, all look pretty good in terms of getting severe cold. Yes, but any frost you can have right now, beautiful. That's great. We need this kind of cool weather just to hold back a wee bit to stop things. But yes, severe cold will do a lot of damage. The only thing he can do is mulch around them, put insulating materials around them. If we do happen to get the cold weather, those things will help a wee bit. But fingers crossed, I think we're going to be okay. I really do. And I hope it doesn't happen.
I like your optimism, Brian. We've got a call from Chris in Victoria. Hi, Chris.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Always hear you, Brian. I have two very quick questions. First question is about seeds. You were talking about seeds earlier and keeping them in the freezer. Over the years, we'll buy a pack of seeds. We'll use some seeds throughout the growing season, and then there will be some left over in the pack. We keep those seeds in a dark place, but it's not cool or refrigerated. I appreciate the concept of lemonading, but am I hamstringing myself to be planting those seeds, if I've had a pack of seeds sitting in there for, a year, 2 years, 3 years? Or is there a good chance that those seeds are going to work just fine?
Chris,
second question I have. Yeah, go ahead, bro. You answer the first one.
No, that is such a good question, Chris. Because a lot of people are thinking the same things. Is keeping the seeds viable is really what we're talking about. How long will they have a lifespan? There is information on seeds in terms of, you look at the World Food Bank in Norway, and those are the ones that I follow because they keep all the seeds frozen because that's the world's supply, the last chance to be able to get things that disappear. But they do keep them frozen. The idea is to keep them as viable as you can, as long as you can. And for over 50 years, we've been putting them in a freezer, again, consistent temperature, consistent humidity. And when they come out, and when you give them warm water to get them going, it seems the germination is a lot better. So leaving them in a dark place, I mean, but it's not going to give you the life that you want. If you have a lot of seeds, you want to use them over a longer period of time. I'd rather be a little bit safe. And if the Norway, our food bank in Norway can do that, I think we could do that as well. It's a good lesson for us.
And Christy,
okay, great. Second question I have real quick is we're doing some indoor growing this season. We have a grow tent, and we're trying to grow tomatoes to see if we can get some winter tomatoes indoors this year. The tomato plant that we have is starting to flower. Am I able to self-pollinate those by using the same flowers on the tomato plant, or do I have to use flowers from different plants to be able to properly pollinate those to get them to grow tomatoes?
Chris, you're full of great questions here. No, when I was really going to grade school, we grew tomatoes, and I had to go and shake the vines before 7 o'clock in the morning. We had to shake the vines, and that's helpful. So just a gentle shake, or if you want a Q-tip around them, that'll be fine. But the tomatoes, flowers on the same tomato, will pollinate. So a little bit of shaking early in the morning was great. And by the way, Chris, we do have, they're a little harder to find, but we have micro tomatoes today and micro peppers today that are, and cucumbers as well. These are the ones we want to be using in winter, where the difficult situations are, it's not hot summer, it's more difficult to grow them. Try those micro varieties like Siam, for example, the tomato I absolutely love. It's incredible production in a small pot, like a 6-inch pot. That'll do great. Those are the varieties that you want to be able to try. You'll have such great success in trying those ones. A little hard to find, but look for those micro varieties. Really will help you, Chris.
Thank
Very
you so
wise and helpful as always, Brian.
Thank you so much for those 2 questions. Of course, if you do have a question, there's still time, a few minutes left to get Brian to answer them for you. Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or of course, you can call us on your cell phone at pound 690. A couple of emails, Brian. We get one from Reed, and he writes, "We have a bunch of wild roses that have gone crazy. They're about 8 feet high and very gangly. We would like to clean them up. How low to the ground can we prune them? Is there anything we should look out for?"
Yeah, Amy, to read, yes, you can prune them back. But again, I do a lot of pruning classes this time of year. And with roses, I'm very particular. You only prune them after the last hard frost. We don't know, we're a long way from, getting to the end of February, March yet. So leave them alone. They're fine the way they are. But when you think we're past our last hard frost, yes, go back and prune them. And if it's a wild rose on its own roots, that type of thing, yes, prune them really hard. Some of the new roses that came out of Europe, for example, there's the Benica was one of those. And the breeder came over to Canada and British Columbia and showed us a lot of things. They pruned them with mowing machines that they use in mowing the lawns and basically beside freeways. So yeah, you can prune them hard. Timing is everything. End of February, early March.
All right, Reed, good luck with your roses. A few more emails, Brian, lots today. Joanne in Victoria writes, can Brian talk a bit about companion planting, especially not to plant your peas with onions? Also, seed saving, which is easy and beneficial to create a climatized generational plant.
Seed saving is great. So many people in the world are doing that. Remember, though, you have to get open pollinated varieties to be able to save the seed. You can still save a seed from hybrid varieties, but you're not going to get the same thing. Going back to grade 3 in Mendel, seeds are not going to be exactly the same. They're going to change, but your hybrids are the ones you have to be careful with that. In terms of companion planting, it's wisdom. It's thinking about things. We have to be so careful when we put one plant next to another. Maybe it keeps something away, but something else is the problem. Like marigolds, for example, attract spider mites. So it's really wisdom in terms of doing that. People are using onions and garlic around plants. Yes, if it's working for you, but experiment, try it. And that's how we learn because, I'm worried about the science and companion planting a wee bit in terms of, what is the relationship. They have symbiotic relationships among the roots and so on. But no, we're gardeners. We experiment. We do those different things. But I highly recommend it because it's something that we all do. But again, try it. And there's little books out there in terms of giving some information. But go for it. Absolutely.
All right. We'll get another call in this time from Tony in Victoria. Tony, you've got a question about a fig tree in your backyard.
Yeah, that's right. We've got a small fig tree. The circumference around the trunk is probably maybe 15 centimeters.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I noticed that another small trunk is starting to grow right next to that one, and I just want to know if I can separate those, without damaging either of them. And then if I can separate them, can I take the smaller one and replant it somewhere? Will it grow into a new tree as well?
Yeah, figs are pretty forgiving. They really are. If you're going to do that, you want to do it reasonably soon while they're dormant, which is very, very important. And make sure you get, make sure you can get an independent root system when you take out that smaller tree and move it. Yes, absolutely. And the other question which folks often worry about, Tony, is the fact that, sometimes the tree gets too big and overpowering. Figs take very kindly to be able to cut that you've got a 6-inch stem there. But basically, if you want to cut it back during the growing season, as things begin to grow, it'll resprout and more shoots will come over a longer period of time. But yeah, I love your idea, getting another fig out of that. That's great. Just make sure you get a good root system, do it while it's still dormant. I love figs, and so many people do. So absolutely.
Thanks for that, Tony. I'm always jealous of all the gorgeous fig trees in my neighborhood, but I have lots of nice neighbors that let me steal from them. We've only got about 45 seconds left for this last one. Luba in Castlegar, you've got a question about your apple tree.
We have a late Spartan, which is harvested in October or so. I'm just concerned why it has brown spotting on the fruit. It's facing east.
Okay, it's weather related. I used to have Dr. Looney at the Canada Research Station in Summerland. I'd phone him all the time for information. He's not there anymore, but essentially it's weather related. And again, one of our American listeners in Washington, who was an apple grower, phoned me after a program and said, Brian, please tell all your folks who are growing fruit trees, apple trees in particular, to put 5 pounds of lime around the drip line of the tree at this time of year. That will help. It'll change the pH. It'll put calcium in them, which is important. Pruning your trees so it's more open and air gets through for the more evening of ripening of fruit, which is very, very important. But summer weather, particularly extreme hot weather, can cause issues like this. And Dr. Looney gave me some names of things that would cause that. It's a disease issue. We really don't have a lot of sprays for that. It's just good health of the tree, putting your lime, and also feed your tree something like a 10, 15,
Brian,
19
I'm
with
so
micronutrients.
sorry.
Yeah.
Brian, we're going to have to leave it
sorry.
there. Thanks so much, Brian.
Okay.
Brian Minter, of course, our gardening columnist.